Joe here in the garage. Today I wanted to cover the T CLOCS inspection report. Springtime just around the corner, except you Florida people. Whatever, don't care. This is a safety inspection everybody should be doing every year, at least once a year, if not twice a year, especially you in Florida who get to ride all year. But it's going to cover basics on tires, controls, lights, fluids, and the chassis. So yes, I have a cheat sheet because I'm old and I forget shit. So let's start with T, tires. You want to inspect the tires and make sure that the tread's in good shape. There's no chunks or anything missing out of them. Check the air pressure in them. Check the date on the tire. All tires have the date of manufacture on them. Please check the date. I see so many bikes out here with tires that are just old. Even though they're not dry rotted, they don't look bad. They're old. They're garbage. Get them off there. Get some new tires. If anything's 6, 7 years old, 10 years old, get rid of it. Check the wheel. Make sure it's not bent. It ain't got no cracks in it anywhere. If it's a lace wheel, spoke wheel, then check the spokes. Make sure all the spokes are there. Make sure nothing's bent. Make sure that the wheel runs true and straight when you turn it. Check the bearings. Give it some good shakes around and see how it feels. There should be no play in these wheel bearings. The bearing seals, make sure they're not oozing grease and oil out everywhere. Then we're going to check the brake. Front brake, back brake, individual from each other, but make sure that they will stop the bike. Go on to controls. So we want to check our handlebars. Make sure that the bushings feel good. Now would be a time to replace them bushings. If they have any kind of play, put a new set of bushings in there. Make sure the bars ain't bent. You ain't sitting there all cockeyed. Everything's straight. Then we want to check all your pedals and shifters, levers. Make sure they're all functioning as they should. Check the cables. Make sure that they're not rubbing on anything. Make sure they're in good shape. Twist freely. If you have a cable style throttle, now would be a time to lube the cables. Take this all apart, lube them up, put it back together. If you have a throttle by wire, make sure this also turns backwards, because that's what turns your cruise control off. So make sure that this rotates how it should rotate for your bike, your year. And then we go on to lights and electrical. First off, check the battery. Pull your seat off, get to the battery, check the terminals, make sure they're clean, tight, no corrosion, fully charged, ready to go. And then we want to check lights. You know, turn that light on. These baggers, boy, we got lights all over the place. Hit the brakes, headlights, turn signals, flashers. Check all that stuff out. Make sure all the lenses are in good shape. All the bulbs are functioning as they should be. Check all your switches. You know, I know, sick horn, but check all your switches. Make sure everything works like it should. Key switch works as it should. Mirrors. Make sure they don't have broke glass in them. Make sure they're good and straight. Clean your mirrors. Wipe them down. If these things are the slightest bit loose to where when your bike's sitting there vibrating in traffic and they don't hold where you put them, buy a new set of mirrors. Replace them. Just get it over with. Suck it up. Spend the $50, $100, and replace them. Let's see. Check the wiring if any wiring is visible, which on this one there's not really too much visible. But make sure it's all in good shape, not frayed, not rubbing on something, getting ready to cause a problem. That's there. Check all your fluids, oils, and the T CLOCS. But check all your fluids. Check your engine oil, your transmission oil, your primary oil. Check the fuel tank. If you have a fuel tank gauge, make sure it works. If it doesn't work, either fix it or drive by how many miles you can get up a tank of fuel, whatever. I know. Make sure you ain't got no obvious leaks anywhere. Check for puddles underneath. Check for anything that's wet. Rub around, see if you can feel anything. Frame, inspect the frame, see if anything looks like it's been bent, if there's cracks anywhere. Check around the neck, check around the swing arm, all that spot. And then we're gonna, let's see here. Yeah, check the steering head bearings. Make sure it turns freely, doesn't act like it's sticking or clicking or anything stupid like that. Here again, check for play. Suspension wise, check the shocks, make sure they're not leaking any oil. They travel without getting binded up. You can do that by sitting on the bike, hold the brake, shove down on the front forks. You can feel how the fronts are doing. On the back, bounce up and down a little bit on it, see how it feels, but make sure they have the proper give. Check your belt and or chain. Check the tension, check the condition, check the sprockets. If you have a chain, now's the time to lube the chain. If you have a belt, don't lube it. I don't know why I need to point that out, but I should. Check nuts and bolts, pretty much anywhere. Check the axle bolt, check the front and rear. If they have an E-clip or a pin or something in there, make sure it's in place to hold everything locked tight. Next, let's see here. Now, then check your kickstand. It'll make sure it functions, make sure the spring works. That spring is $5 from the hardware store. So if you're riding around your kickstand always like this, because it won't stay up all the way, spend $5 to buy a spring. It's not that hard, not that big of a deal. That pretty much is going to cover it. Those are the basics on it. Make sure everything works. I don't want to see somebody out there have a crash because they didn't bother to check their bike out. Any other questions? Like, comment, subscribe, all that other fun stuff. Later.